Robin Blackburn McBride here, transformational life coach and author. And today I am speaking to you about the topic of clarity, and specifically within that topic, the subtopic of values and how important it is to have a beautifully, carefully distilled list of top core values. And so before I get into that material, I would love to share a story with you. You know I love stories. This particular story comes from Greek culture. It's over 2,000 years old. It is a fable by Aesop. A man and his son and a donkey are walking along towards the market. And as they're traveling, the man hears someone call out from the side of the road, "You fool! Donkeys are meant for carrying things, and you should be riding your donkey." So he picks up his son and he places him on the back of the donkey, and they continue along and they pass another group. And someone from the next group calls out, "For shame! Look at that lazy youth riding the donkey while his poor father trudges along beside." So the man removes his son from the donkey. He gets up on the donkey and they continue along, and they pass a group of women. Well, one of the women in the group they pass indignantly cries out, "For shame! For shame! How could you be riding the donkey when your little boy is walking along beside?" At this point, he pulls his son up onto the donkey with him, and they continue along, and they pass another group, and someone from the next group cries out, "You should be ashamed, overburdening an animal like that." Well, at this point, the man gets down from the donkey, he lifts his son off of the donkey, and he goes and he finds a pole. He chops down the pole, he brings it back. He and his son tie the hooves of the donkey to this pole. They hoist the pole with the donkey up onto their shoulders. They continue along, and at this point, people are pointing, they're whispering, they're laughing, and the two with the donkey begin to cross a bridge over a river. The donkey wriggles one of his back legs free and he kicks the boy. The boy drops the pole, and the pole and the donkey fall over the edge of the bridge, and the donkey drowns. Now, the whole way along, an old man has been following them on the road, and he says, "Please all, and you will please no one." So why do I share that story in the context of a video for you that is a coaching video? Well, for a few reasons. One thing I want to point out is the donkey. You know, often we think of donkeys as beasts of burden or perhaps stubborn animals. The donkey is very much symbolic of intelligence. The donkey signifies persistence, a willingness to serve, determination, and also faith in the creative process, in life's creation. And so when the donkey falls and drowns, all of that is lost. When people come into coaching, now this is not true in every case, but in a number of cases, quite a few cases, when people come into coaching, and I'm talking about really fine people, people who care, people who are smart, people who are high achieving, people who aim to serve. When people come into coaching, one of the things I hear again and again is that overwhelm has just got to the point in life where life is just not fun anymore. And in fact, feelings of being overwhelmed have been the catalysts for entering a structure of support in order to completely up-level results and create a whole new set of results. I share that because I was one of those people once. That was certainly my experience. In fact, for years of my life, I would have periods of time where I would go into overwhelm. Why was that? Because too often I was saying yes and not often enough. I was not really connecting with my core values and saying no. So there's a very old statement it's a directive really, let your yes be yes and your no be no. Well, if you don't know your core values, it's very difficult to do that. And so years ago, I was in my late 30s. I will be the first to say that for the first couple of decades of my adult life, now looking back, I'm reminded of something that I read years ago by the literary scholar Northrop Frye. He said, some characters travel by shipwreck. Well, certainly in a couple of domains of my life, I felt like I had been traveling by shipwreck. But I got to a point, I mean, I was successful in some ways, absolutely, but I got to a place in my life where, I guess the latest shipwreck had led me to what felt like a beautiful, quiet shore. And I was living in a new flat. I was a single mom at the time, living with my little girl who was an adolescent then. She's grown up now, so this was a long, long time ago. And I was drawn to a book on my shelf called The Road Less Traveled. And this is a very famous book by M. Scott Peck. And I think one of the reasons I was drawn to the book was that the title resonated. It, of course, reminded me of the famous and very beautiful poem by Robert Frost. And the name of the poem is The Road Not Taken. You are likely very familiar with the final stanza of this poem. I'm going to read it to you. I shall be telling this with a sigh somewhere ages and ages hence. Two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. So what is Frost saying in that poem? He's really saying sometimes we have to do what it takes in order to live the life that we truly feel called to live. And that is not always an easy decision to make. And it does mean that we learn to move in ways that are not necessarily the conventional ways, and yet that makes a difference for us. And so as I was reading the book by M. Scott Peck, one of the things that struck me was a very simple invitation to create a list of my own core values. Well, here I was in my late 30s, and I had never done that before. And so I did it. I wrote out this list of core values, and it felt like a relief. I had never actually designated time for that activity before and brought my awareness to it. And the list that I wrote out, they were not my parents' values necessarily. They were not the values of a particular religious institution. They were not the value set of a particular educational institution or my friends or the messages that the culture were sending every day. No, they were mine. They were my core values. And that helped to shift things within me. And I started to be better able to make decisions and sometimes say yes and sometimes say no. Now, having said all of that, I still wasn't at a place where my list was refined enough to really fully serve me. And in fact, it would not be until I was a couple of years into my coaching practice that I really discovered and began to use a process that helps you and me, anyone really, be crystal clear in what that short list of core values is. And I want to pause and just make the point that it was very easy for me to work with a very long list of values because there are so many great values, but it was the length of the list that was the problem. I couldn't remember them all. So a short list is really essential, and I liken it to an artist with a palette. A fine artist will be very selective and will choose a limited set of colors to paint from. And it's the limitation, it's the narrowing that actually creates the unity in the work of art. Well, it's the same within us. When you have a short list, you can memorize that list. It becomes much easier and more useful to work with. So I want to share with you the technique that I use. After you've listened to this video, I encourage you to go to Google and search for values lists, core values lists. There are lots of them on the internet. I distilled lists into one, and it's a compilation that I give to my clients who come into work with me. You can do this for yourself just simply by looking for those lists. And when you have enough lists in front of you, simply give yourself permission to go through the lists with a highlighting pen and highlight all the values that have real juice for you, the ones that you really feel you resonate with. So once you've done that, you're going to have a long list of values highlighted. And here's mine. I think I have about 30 values highlighted on this two-sided sheet of paper. Then what you do, and I'll show you once again, is you transfer those values onto a separate sheet. Okay, so you've now got your long list of values in front of you. Now, the next step is to, on another piece of paper, come up with 5 areas and 5, these will become 5 categories. So when you go back to that long list that you've compiled, start to notice which values go together and start to transfer values into certain groups. I'm going to give you an example. I think the example is going to probably best explain what I mean. Here is my result. Okay, so there are clusters of values on this sheet. And in every cluster, the values within that cluster are linked. And they're linked in ways that are very specific to the way I think of things. Okay, so this is all about owning your own process, defining your own terms. So for example, one of my core values is creative excellence. Notice that I did not say creative perfection. Creative excellence. I know that when I attempt to be perfect at anything, I end up tying myself in knots, taking way too long. So excellence is the way I go. And in that category for me, I have effectiveness, organization, structure, efficiency, professionalism. I have love, creativity, clarity, decisiveness, and commitment. So all of those belong under the heading of creative excellence for me, and I know exactly what I mean when I bring that value to mind. So that's what you do. You do it 5 times so that you have 5 sets and 5 titles, and therefore 5 core values. I want to teach you a couple of ways of remembering the values. I mentioned a couple minutes ago the artist's palette. One thing you may wish to do is color code your values so that you can readily bring them to mind. That's a visual way of memorizing them. Another thing you may wish to do is you may wish to find a symbolic object for each of the values and perhaps create a little space on a shelf that you look at frequently where your core value signifiers are. And here's an example of one of mine. This is a singing bear. This is a Zuni fetish carved by a lady who lives in the US Southwest. It's a little bear made of mother of pearl. And for me, the bear signifies healing and wholeness. And of course, it signifies those things to a great many people, not just to me. And I have carefully chosen this singing bear. Of course, I always like to remind myself and you and anyone who comes into work with me privately as a client to sing your song while you're here. So when we are feeling healed, when we are feeling whole, then we truly are free to bring our gifts. So this connects very much with one of my 5 core values, which is that I am about making a significant difference in people's lives. And I mean a difference mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and even physically. So helping you return to wholeness, helping me return to wholeness, all of this for me is very much part of my mission in this lifetime. So I would love to hear from you. I would love to know what you discover in the process of coming up with your 5 top core values. I would love to know also if you have any questions about the process. Write in the comments below. I'd be happy to answer. And if you haven't subscribed to this YouTube channel, please do, because I have more in store for you. Until next time, make it amazing. I look forward to the next time we connect. Bye for now.